Hey Luminary, to celebrate the launch of this brand new podcast and my Valentine's birthday, I'm hosting a huge party in San Francisco on Friday, February 14th from 7 to 10 p.m. at 111 Minna. The party is completely free, but you'll need a ticket to attend. My friend Shami D from LA is going to help me MC and DJ the event. I'll be selecting 3 people for a live Astro brand reading. We'll have birthday cake, a bubbly toast, and goodie bags, all free because, well, it's my birthday. Yes, on Valentine's Day. Go to thesavvyluminary.com, thesavvyluminary.com for your free tickets. Invite your astrology-loving friends and come celebrate with me this dream come true. Aloha and welcome to The Savvy Luminary, an astrology podcast for entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Leslie Tagorda, a brand astrologer, designer, and spiritual business owner who has helped hundreds of businesses and nonprofits go from stuck to unstoppable. I am here to inspire you to make confident and focused moves that shine the light on your business through astrological insight, brand strategy, and interviews with other spiritual business leaders. I believe you are here to share your magic and shine brightly like the luminary you are meant to be. Okay, let's dig into this week's episode. Hello, Luminary. It's Leslie Tagorda, your brand astrologer and designer. And here we are at our third and final episode of our 3-part introductory series to lay the foundation of what the rest of the podcast is going to be about. Okay. In the first introductory episode, I told you a little bit about me so you could understand my background and get an understanding of my approach to astrology and business, and just kind of the filters that I work within, right? It's really important to know the filters of the different astrologers and other spiritual guides that you're working with. You want to make sure that those filters are aligned. In the second episode of the introduction series, I shared my vision of this podcast, right? Why I was motivated to create a podcast and who it's for. And so in this third introductory episode, I want to share the ways that you as an entrepreneur can use astrology in a practical way to operate within your business and brand with more clarity, courage, and confidence. Now, I know I mentioned entrepreneurs here, but if you're not an entrepreneur and you're a business leader, you can still apply these principles, or if you have hopes of being an entrepreneur one day, all of these tools are for you. Okay, so what I want to discuss today in all of the ways that entrepreneurs can use astrology in their businesses is how astrology is a powerful and precise tool for business. Okay, that's what I first want to cover. And then I want to talk about what I do and don't use for astrology, because that's also equally important in my approach to astrology. And then we're going to dig into the 7 practical ways that any entrepreneur can use astrology in their business. We have a lot to cover in this foundational episode, so let's get started. So, did you know that you can use astrology as a precise tool for business and branding? Right? If you're a more practical business, you might be thinking, really using astrology for business? And maybe questioning that. I get it, right? I believe that in the beginning, when psychology first started coming to the fore, people were like, using psychology, that's kind of a quasi science for business, right? People were kind of questionable. But now, no one ever bats an eye at using psychology for business. And in fact, if we look at the ways that people use psychology in business, people use psychology all the time, from branding to strengths finding to sales and everything in between. But modern psychology was actually based on ancient astrological archetypes. And, if you go back to the Greek or the Roman days, many of the leaders, the political leaders or the business leaders or the aristocrats, they had their spiritual guides. They had their astrologers helping them go forth and do the things that they're supposed to do, right? So if we take a step back and we go to modern psychology, if we kind of look at where it all started, there were, I think it was like five psychologists. Carl Jung was one of them. He was considered one of the forefathers of modern psychology, and or rather a founding father of psychology. And he actually used astrology extensively when he was working with patients, especially the patients that he had a hard time really understanding and getting clear on. There are several books that Carl Jung refers to in astrology, and I actually have one book that is all about Carl Jung and his mentions of astrology in his work, right? And so when we can look at astrology as a tool for psychology, we can really understand the key insights and the ways that we can operate with more alignment in our businesses. And I say alignment because if you've ever driven a car where your tires are misaligned, the car kind of swerves one way, the tires get worn in a funny way, like you have to replace the tires more often, your car doesn't run as well. Well, that's the same with us. When we're not really working within alignment to our key energies that we can see in astrology, we're actually working against ourselves and making things harder for ourselves. Okay, so let's just agree here to go forward that we can use astrology as a precise tool in business and branding. And I'll cover like very specific ways on how we're going to do that. Now, what I want to lay down here is what I won't be using astrology for. Okay, I am not here to talk about forecasting, right? While I will be giving you current astrological weather that talks about our collective cycles, our personal energies versus like using transits. Transits are when certain stars and luminaries cross over or activate our different natal energies. When we're talking about those, I'm not here to create predictions. I'm here to talk about the weather and the cosmic cycles so that we can utilize that energy to our benefit versus making a prediction of what's going to happen in the future, right? So if you're looking at a weather forecast for the week and you're going to see that there's rain coming up, right, from the weatherman that the rain may come or it may not come. And so, but you're still going to have your umbrella handy, right? So what I'm here to talk about is that when we're looking at the astrological weather, I want you to use those energies to help you make choices, because I believe that astrology is about free will. No matter what, you have choices, right? And astrological energies have different levels of them, different vibrations. You can express an astrological energy as in its lowest vibration, where you're working with kind of like the shadow parts of that vibration, or you can work with astrology and its highest vibrations. And oftentimes we're kind of like working in the middle until we're super conscious and have clarified everything that we want, that we can move up a level, right? So with your free will, you have choices. You have choices on what you're going to do with the energies that are presented with you. You can throw them away, you can overwork yourself, or you can use them in the way that in which the highest vibration will be expressed, and you get to choose, right? So just like in poker, and believe you me, I have been there. I'm not a great poker player, but let's just say I've had a really great hand and I totally blew it. And I've also had really mediocre hands and managed to win the game, right? It's about what we do with our cards. So before we go forward, I'd like you to understand a term that I'll be talking about a lot, and it's called the natal chart. Okay? Your astrological natal chart is a map of the planets and the luminaries and other calculations at the time that you were born. At the, not only the time, but actually even the place that you were born, because the earth is round, right? And if we think about our rising sign, which we'll talk about more in depth, the rising sign is different depending on where on earth you were born, right? So if you can imagine that moment that you took your first breath, all of the planets and the luminaries all were in a specific location and positioned in houses that represent areas of your life or your business, right? We all have natal charts, and maybe your business has a natal chart too, right? So how I like to do it is that if you are the face of your brand, like the speaker, and we want to look at your chart so you can step into your leadership role to be the face of the brand. Now, if your business has a collective culture that is more than you, we'd also like to look at the business chart. And so earlier I was mentioning that we cast the chart from the time that you took your first breath. So we think about your business, you have to decide when your business took its first breath. So this could be the moment that you pressed return to purchase a domain name and you decided on a name that you loved, or it could be the moment that you signed your LLC or a partnership agreement with somebody else. If you have a brick and mortar, it could also be the time that you signed your rental agreement and made that space yours, right? So you have to decide on when your business took its first breath. This goes a little bit deeper, but we could also do rebirth charts if your business moves or has other phases that you'd like to assess. I've done that too, and I'm always surprised at the similarities in charts. It is no coincidence that we are born with the correct natal chart to learn how to express our energies at the highest vibration. All right, let's get into the 7 ways entrepreneurs can use astrology in their business. The first way entrepreneurs can use astrology in their businesses is to use it as a tool for strengths finding and insight, right? You've probably taken a number of personality assessments and strengths finding tools and different kinds of tools for your personality and your psychological makeup, right? So that you can use your strengths and work in your zone of genius, right? And so, like all tools, you can use them in an empowering or disempowering way. And what I mean by that is that you could focus on what you're really good at, or you can beat yourself up over the things that you're not good at. And so, my brand, my style of astrology is for us to really look at our strengths and use our gifts as well as our challenges in an empowered way, right? Because earlier I was talking about this idea of free will. Just because we have energies that, you can pass judgment on as like, oh, this is a challenging energy or a good energy, I call BS on that, because we get to choose how we want to express and utilize those energies. We get to choose how we want to utilize our strengths and our weaknesses, right? So when I work with my coaching clients in gaining visibility and crystallizing their brand, my style of astrology is to ask questions based on what I see in their charts, right? It's my intention that these questions spark my clients to uncover their own inner truths, to come to the things that they already know to be true, but they just needed a little bit of guidance on how to manage everything, right, in their brand and their business. I just love using astrology as a strengths finder, as a tool for insight, because this allows us to build clarity, courage, and confidence. And I say these 3 things in progression because these are the ingredients to being seen, to being visible, and to contributing, right? So, first is clarity. We need to first gain clarity on recognizing our own strengths and value. We all come into this world with a gift to offer, and we all have these gifts and these offerings in our business. And until you recognize the value of what you really bring to the table, you're not going to be able to take that next step. You have to first recognize your value. After you are able to recognize your value, and often when we use astrology, or the way that I use astrology to recognize value, you're like, oh my gosh, I had this thing sitting in front of me the entire time. How did I not recognize it before? Sometimes it's really hard to recognize your own values, right? So, don't beat yourself up over that. But once we recognize our value, now we have to own our value. And sometimes this can kind of take time, right? We'll come in and out about owning our value. But once we can really say, hey, this is what I have to offer, and you are going to love it because I love it, right? That's owning our value. When we stand next to our gifts, our offering, our ways that we transform others, whether it's a product or a service, right? There's value in what you're offering. There's a deeper significance in your product than just kind of I want to say face value, but if you're selling beauty products, right? You're not selling a face oil, you're selling beauty. Right? And so you have to own that before other people are going to be able to see that value. I hope that makes sense, right? So once you own your value, right, you've recognized it, you own it now, you're claiming it, that this is really a gift of mine to offer you. Then our next challenge is to be able to communicate that value to others in a clear and succinct way, right? And when you're able to recognize, own, and communicate your value, this just gives you so much clarity. You've brushed away all of the dust, you shined it up, you've really polished your brand, right? And so when you're really clear, all of a sudden you're courageous, right? You're ready to do the scary and risky things in your business to put yourself out there, right? Of course, we know that courage is the ability to do something scary, not because you're not scared, but because you're going to do it despite it being scary, right? We all have to do this at some point in our lives if we are going to be successful, if we're going to be visible, if we're going to contribute, right? It's a courageous thing to contribute your ideas and your opinions into a community, because there's this idea of vulnerability. Maybe people don't agree with you, or maybe people will really love you and you're not ready for the recognition yet. Whatever, everybody is at a different place with their relationship to courage and what scares them, right? So we have clarity, we have courage. And after courage, you've done the scary thing, right? As you continue to do more and more scary and risky things that grows your businesses and your brand's visibility, you start to embody confidence. And confidence is a practice, right? And true confidence is very different from that kind of look at me, I'm so awesome, where oftentimes there's this overextending of confidence, which everybody can smell that it is inauthentic. We are talking about authentic confidence here. Confidence that just radiates and exudes from you because you've done the scary things, because maybe you've made mistakes, but you've gotten up again and you've learned from those mistakes, right? And when I look at, I have a 4-year-old son and he exudes confidence. He already tells me at 4 years old that he knows how to do everything. So if we can all learn from young children about confidence, he doesn't care that he's peed in his pants or fell down. He's still showing up being the bright, happy child that he is. So lessons to learn in confidence from a 4-year-old. right? So when we can use astrology to build our clarity, build our courage, and build our confidence, I see that in your chart. I can see that in your elements. I can see that in your modalities. I can see that in just even like different placements of different planets and luminaries. And when we can key into those things, when we can see them clearly in our charts, it just it just validates what we already know to be true. And a little bit of validation goes a huge way. And now sometimes it's not validation. This could be something like, whoa, an aha moment. I never realized that about myself. And then you peel back the layers and we come to validation again because you are just remembering. Those aha moments are like remembering and tapping into what you already know, right? So when we understand our astrological makeup through strengths and insight, we can validate our feelings and also give ourselves permission to be exactly who we are instead of trying to be someone else. Okay, on to the second way that entrepreneurs can use astrology in their business. And this is for branding and psychological archetyping. Now, I just have to say that this is the core of my entire business. I have built an entire framework on branding using astrology for this business, right? And before I go into branding and psychological archetyping, I want to define how I see and how I define what a brand is. Now, we can talk about branding, and often most of us think of branding as our logo, our colors, our visual identity, right? But our brand is way more than just our visual identity. It would like be saying if you were to meet me and just say that my face was me. But you know that my face is way more than me. I have my soul, I have my body, I have my aura. I have the way that you experience me and the feelings that you have towards me. So, our brand is really the heart and soul of the experience that somebody has with your business, right? So, branding, let's get this really clear. I'm going to say it again. Branding is the experience that someone has with your business. Every single touch point, including your visuals, but not just your visuals. This is your communications, all of your messaging, all of your social media, the systems that you have in your business to onboard or offboard, or your packaging. Every single touch point, even your customer service, right, is an extension of your branding because all of these different touch points impress a feeling upon someone, right? Because our businesses are they're everywhere. They're online, they're brick and mortar, you meet people in person. All of these touch points give us a feeling, and we don't know where people are going to come into contact with our business the first time. So it's really important that there's a cohesive impression and feeling that our potential customer is impressed upon so that they become a buying ideal customer, right? So let's take a look at this. All branding experts can agree that branding comes down to psychological archetyping, right? And we talk about the psychological archetyping because at the deepest level, these archetypes are based on the storylines that humans are created upon. And each of these stories and each of these archetypes are so interwoven in our humanity that each one of us has a specific feeling or impression based on an archetype. So, for example, a psychological archetype would be the mother. Everybody knows what the mother is. And now certain people have different experiences with different types of mothering. But we can all agree that the archetype of the mother is nurturing and caring, right? Or another psychological archetype might be the sage, the wise person who's full of wisdom to share with those that are seeking, right? Now, if you think about all of these archetypes, there are 12 psychological archetypes. And guess what? There are 12 zodiacs. And these psychological archetypes are based on our zodiac archetypes. All right. So in this book, I'll put it up here really quickly. It's called The Hero and the Outlaw: Building Extraordinary Brands Through the Power of Archetypes. It's written by Margaret Mark and Carol S. Pearson. Okay. This book was very, very, very influential to me. It was kind of funny because I was reading the book and really into psychological archetyping as I was assigning a single archetype onto a business. And what was happening for me as I was like looking to put a single archetype onto a business, I just never felt that it truly fit, because being a multiracial person, being this person who is always blending all of my different experiences into one, I've always had this multi-layered, multifaceted approach to branding and archetyping, where we are a combination of multiple archetypes, where different ones speak at different times. But this book here, The Hero and the Outlaw, when they were laying out the archetypes, I just kept on going back to, oh my gosh, this is the Cancer archetype. Oh my gosh, this is so Leo. Oh my gosh, this is so Aries. Oh, this is so Aquarius. I kept on putting them through these astrological filters. And this was before I had figured out to combine astrology. But I would say that this book is kind of the seed that really allowed me to come full circle and bring this psychological archetyping that we use in branding back to astrology, right? So, like I've mentioned before, I built an entire branding framework and a coaching program around using our astrology to become more visible by aligning our brands to the different archetypes that want to be seen in our natal charts. All right. Specifically, the sun sign, the moon sign, and the rising sign. I have an entire framework that I will share with you in a future episode. So, astrology can show us how to be uniquely ourselves, right? So, branding from within in this multifaceted way. And when we brand by our astrological makeup and by the stars as they were imprinted at the time that we took our first breath, we no longer have to copy or compare, right? We are free to create a one of a kind aligned brand based on our cosmic design, right? I'm going to say that again. No more copying or comparing, because this is one of the things that I always see newbie business owners and entrepreneurs coming like, oh, I need to look like this person, or I need to sound like that person. And you're always comparing because you haven't yet done the internal work to understand the energies and the communication styles that really need to come to the fore, right? When you use astrology to brand, there's no other natal chart that's exactly like yours. Trust me, even if you had a twin that was born 4 minutes later, it casts a completely different chart because of the house systems, because how some like luminaries, the moon moves quickly or rising sign moves quickly. So 4 minutes can make a huge difference. There are no two natal charts alike. So what better way to map out your one of a kind brand than using astrology? All right. The third way that entrepreneurs can use astrology in their business is to use astrology to identify their soul customers and their communities at large, right? Now, can you just imagine that if you knew exactly who your ideal customer is? Now, you might have a niche business, and maybe you are an accountant and you only work with entrepreneurs, or you are a designer and you only work with cannabis companies, right? That's really specific and that's niche. What if I told you that there is a deeper, more energetic way to connect to your ideal customers than just through an avatar exercise, right? Astrology can identify your soul customers in an energetic and archetypal way. Earlier, I was talking about branding using psychological archetyping. And all of these archetypes have a specific energy. They have specific hopes and dreams and frustrations and fears. And astrology can point that out to us. I'm sure most of us here have done a customer avatar exercise, talking about the demographics, is she a mom? Does she have children? What kind of car does she drive? What does she do with her free time, right? Those are important things. I'm not dissing customer avatars, but there's an energetic layer, right? Because there's lots of moms with 2 kids driving Volvos and who are lawyers, right? There's lots of them, right? But knowing what really drives and motivates that specific mom, that lawyer, Volvo, 2 children mom, is going to differ depending on what her archetype is. And astrology can tell us what her real hopes and dreams are versus just kind of some superficial information, right? Astrology can also tell us the shadows that they're dealing with. So there are different energies, polarities in a natal chart that we can use to see exactly who your soul customers are that you are supposed to commit to, right? So similar to relationship astrology, the people that you're supposed to partner with, they are going to express a certain psychological archetype. So for me, my soul customers are the Sagittarius archetypes. Now, this is not to say that the people that I'm supposed to be working with are all Sagittarians. That is not true, right? I have many different signs of customers that I work with. But Sagittarians, what they truly want at the deepest level is they want freedom, right? They want freedom to explore their own inner truths. They want to do things in their own way. And they want to feel like they're making a significant impact, right? Sagittarians are the explorers of the zodiac. And some of them are explorers from home, listening to podcasts and reading books. And some of them are explorers who are traveling straight across the world to find themselves. But I know that energetically speaking, my ideal soul customers have the need for freedom to do what they want, right? And astrology can tell us that. Now, in addition to our soul customers, these are the people that we're supposed to commit to. But if you're working in marketing, you're probably building a funnel. You're probably building a community and a platform. And that community is larger than the people that we're specifically supposed to commit to working with. And we can see who our communities at large are also using astrology. There is a specific astrological key that tells us the communities that we're supposed to be working with. For me, the communities that I'm supposed to be working with embody the Aries archetype, right? And if you know Aries, they're the first of the zodiac and they want courage. They want to be themselves. It's all about I. It's all about leadership. It's all about literally being seen, right? So when I know that these different psychological archetypes, the myths and the stories that they work within, I'm better able to create communications that draw my soul customers and my ideal communities in, right? So astrology as a tool can show us our ideal customers and our communities, their exact struggles and their exact dreams so that we can create communications that will draw them in. And when we know the energetics of what our customers want and need, and we create those things for them, there is no limit. The fourth way that entrepreneurs can use astrology in their business is to create specific communication styles and on brand messaging, right? I mentioned earlier that our brand is the experience that people have with our businesses that leaves a lasting impression, right? So it's about the emotional response. And emotional response is gotten through stories and personality, right? So if we understand our astrological communication style, we're able to create a brand personality that is completely aligned to our specific communication style. More than personality, our messaging, all of the messaging that comes from our brand and the style of our voice allows our business and our brand to connect with others and to engage with others through stories, marketing messages, sales, promotions, everything that you're putting out in your business, right? Even your visuals. Your visuals need to reflect the personality and communication style of your brand, right? So astrology can give us a specific communication style, how to communicate, the words that resonate, the personality that resonates. There's no guessing when we use astrology. Now, it can be a stretch. I know for me that I kind of resisted my astrological communication style, but once I finally gave in and started running with it, at first I thought my communication style is supposed to be about bravery and self-love and just like open-hearted joy. And at first I really resisted it. Even though I was friendly, I was still trying to be edgy. And that is not my communication style. So once I really focused in on love and joy, things started really opening up. So yes, we can resist what our astrological energies tell us our communication style. We can definitely resist and choose not to. Again, I talked about free will and choosing, but that just takes us longer to get to where we need to. So lesson learned here from me that I need to even further align and move towards my happy, joyous communication style, right? And when we use our astrology to understand our own unique communication style, we can create marketing and promotional messaging that is completely aligned with our energy, right? This is really important. I'm going to say that again because I think it's so important. When we can use our astrological energies to understand our communication style, we can then create marketing and promotional messaging that is completely aligned with our design. The fifth way that entrepreneurs can use astrology is to use it for positioning and discernment. And what I mean by this is that when we position our business, we direct it in a way that we want to grow towards. We direct it in a way that fulfills our purpose and our vision, right? And this allows us, when we actually understand our positioning and where we need to grow towards, this gives us an understanding of the types of offers that resonate within our own cosmic design, right? So, of course, when we're creating offers, we have to create offers that are attractive to our soul customers, but we also have to create offers that are in alignment with our soul's purpose and what we are supposed to grow into, right? Because there are places in our chart that identify where our soul or the soul of our business, what it wants to accomplish in its lifetime, right? It's our soul's potential, right? This is what we want to accomplish in our lifetime. And this is a stretch. This is not meant to be easy. So, as you're creating and positioning your offer in the marketplace, right? Because we all have competitors. There's really nothing new and unique, right? But the way that we position our offering and how we offer it will be unique and different from others in our field if we use our astrological energies to give us insight as to how to position it. I hope that makes sense, right? So, when we use astrology, we can indicate our offer's impact and purpose to give it differentiation so that people, our soul customers, know that our offer is exactly for them versus a competitor's, right? Again, and I shouldn't use the word competitor because there is enough for all of us here, right? We're not trying to necessarily take away business from somebody else. We're just trying to call in the people that we are supposed to serve, right? So when we use astrology to position our business, we can easily differentiate ourselves from others in our field to create offers that are completely magnetic to our ideal customers. The sixth way that entrepreneurs can use astrology in business is to use it as a tool for leadership development. As an entrepreneur, you are a leader. You are being looked up to for guidance. You are being looked at for direction. And whether or not we like it, people see us in a very specific way. And we must step into that role, step into that type of leadership so we can be the guide that we are meant to be, right? So even if you're building a community, like community builders, the people that are bringing communities together, they are seen as the leader because they are bringing people together, right? So, regardless of what your role is in your business, you have to step into your leadership role. And the best leaders are, of course, confident. The best leaders are authentic, right? Leaders don't always have to know everything. Actually, leaders are often more respected when they admit to not knowing everything. But of course, there are things that certain leaders need to know depending on what industry they're in, right? And so there is a very specific astrological key that tells us the leader, the kind of leader that we're supposed to be. So just like psychological archetypes, right? Each of these archetypes have a specific leadership style as well. So earlier we were talking about the mom archetype, right? In the zodiac, that would be the Cancer archetype. This Cancer archetype leads with nurturing, leads with emotional safety and inclusion into a community, right? Maybe the leader is an Aries type of leader. This is the type of leader that needs to forge forward the path and march towards whatever goal they're going towards. Or maybe, like me, I am a Gemini leader, right? The Gemini has a wide wealth of knowledge. I'm not necessarily a specialist. I'm never gonna, well, I do, but it wouldn't be in my natural state to go really, really, really deep into one subject. That's when I will bring in an expert to go really deep into something specific. But as a Gemini leader, I am here to teach through stories. How beautiful is that? I love being a Gemini leader. At first, of course, like my communication style, at first I really resisted being a Gemini leader. I was putting all of the bad things about Geminis. Oh, they're scattered. Oh, they're this or that. And I'm, I was using astrology in the way that I hate using astrology now, right? I was just focusing on all of the shadow elements. But when I look at the gift of the Gemini, the gift of the Gemini is bringing people together through a shared love of information. And I'm pretty sure that's why you're here. So when we understand our leadership style based on our astrology, we're able to grow into that leadership style. And of course, everything is about evolution, right? So we're going to continue to grow and continue to peel back the layers of what it means to be that type of leader. And when we grow into that leadership style that is already specified in our natal charts, it actually makes us more trustworthy, because whether we like it or not, people already see us like that. And so when we can be more authentic and step into that leadership role that people are already projecting on us, it grows our know, like, and trust factor. I'm sure you've heard about those terms if you're working on any type of marketing and brand awareness. We need to build our know. People need to know us. Then people need to like us. And then people need to trust us before they ever buy from us. So being that specific, authentic leader is so important. And yeah, it's a stretch sometimes, but the more we practice, the more we grow into it, the more confident we become, right? So in astrology, we can validate and point to what we mostly know to be true, right? Our leadership style, and stretch into those highest ideals. So we can look at our true leadership styles as an asset versus our liability. And when we embody our natural tendencies and love our perceived challenges, we can focus in on the leadership style that people already see us in, right? We can work in our zones of genius and delegate things to others because we are super confident and clear of the leader that we are supposed to show up as and be. All right, and for the last seventh way that entrepreneurs can use astrology in their business is as a tool for scheduling and cosmic cycles. So, this is kind of a big one, and I can probably do an episode on each one of these collective and personal cycles. But astrology is basically like a clock. It's a system that repeats over and over and over again. And we have these different cycles, whether they be macro cycles, like seasonal cycles. There's actually even like wider than seasonal cycles, like some of the outer planets who take 84 years or 240 years to transit, right? Like, so we have these big collective cycles and seasonal cycles. I'm just going to call them the macro cycles. Then we have, of course, our monthly cycles that are dictated by our closest luminary, the moon. We, of course, also have our daily cycles that work with our own unique biorhythms. And then we have within our daily cycles, we even have micro cycles such as void of course moons, which I'll talk about a little more in detail, right? But when we understand our collective cycles, the cycles that affect all of us, and our own personal cycles, the cycles that how planets trigger our through transits our own natal strengths, when we know these personal cycles, this will help us in our business because we can create operations and systems and schedules that allow us to know when and when not to launch, right? When and when not to post on social media, when to relax, because relaxing is just as important as when to dig in, right? Like I was mentioning all the way in the very beginning of this episode, I'm not so much into forecasting or predicting the future, but rather using these cosmic cycles to align our own rhythms with the work that we are doing. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about collective cycles. Like I mentioned, these are the cycles that affect all of us, right? So we can be in a zodiac season. So I'm recording this right now in Aquarius season. And Aquarius season is about innovation and bringing groups together and hopes and dreams, right? We can also be talking about this in our monthly cycles. The 8 phases of the moon are very important for us to either set intentions at the new moon or harvest and give thanks at the full moon. And there's all of the phases in between that tell us when we need to push hard or when we need to relax, right? And so we are all going through these collective cycles. And when we know that there's a collective energy going on, we can have create more space and more patience, right? Some other collective cycles that we're going to be talking a lot about are retrograde cycles. There is a Mercury retrograde is coming up, and I was talking a little bit about Mercury retrograde earlier because Mercury retrograde happens 3 times a year, and it's starting on February 16th, the first of 3 retrogrades this year. And Mercury retrograde, it's so fantastic that everybody knows about Mercury retrograde now, right? At the very surface level, people are like, don't travel, back up your computer, and all of those things. And it's wonderful that Mercury retrograde is in our collective conscious, because what that means is when these energies come into the collective conscious, it means that these energies are needed. And Mercury retrogrades are about resetting and reprioritizing so that we can live in more alignment, like get rid of all of the clutter. And so if you've ever felt held back by a Mercury retrograde, like you're stuck in traffic or your computer crashes or whatnot, there's a bigger meaning behind that the cosmos is asking you to look at. So instead of fighting against it and creating friction, what I would recommend is during these retrograde cycles is to understand what needs to be reassessed, right? So let's talk a little bit about our personal cycles. So earlier I was talking about planetary transits, right? The outer planets move much slower, so they have significant transits in our lives. You might have already heard about your Saturn return that happens at around age 28 or 29. It will be exact for just a moment in time, but you're going to feel the buildup and you're going to feel the letdown of that huge Saturn transit. And oftentimes in these personal cycles, the first Saturn return is the heralding in of your adulthood. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, I bet you're out there, you probably started your business during a Saturn return. I know I personally started my business at a Saturn return. I couldn't work for anybody anymore, right? Like during your Saturn return, you're getting rid of things that you don't need anymore, right? I love looking at Jupiter transits because wherever Jupiter is going through in your chart at the time, it's expanding, right? So we can look like mostly Jupiter transits are really, really fun and really great, but we always have to watch out for exceeding, like just overreaching just a little bit wherever Jupiter is transiting, right? Then we have Uranus transits, which I've already gone through my Uranus opposition Uranus. This is what normally we call our midlife crises, but I was talking to some people today and we've decided to rename it into our midlife revelations, right? It's kind of a shakeup in our lives that we get thrown these unexpected curveballs until we're on a different path. And then if you're so lucky to be listening here and you have reached your second Saturn return, this happens around age 58. At this time, you are being asked to now become the mentor and the elder in your communities. You have so much information to share, right? So there's all of these different personal cycles that we're overlaying on our collective cycles, that we overlay on our businesses and our brands, that give us so much insight as to where we're going to have energy to drive forward, and maybe where we're feeling a little bit drained and need to kind of step back a little bit and process and relax and receive. Because just like nature and our businesses, we can't just be going all the time, because guess what? That is burnout. And as a sufferer of many different burnouts over my career, burnouts are not fun. And if we keep pushing ourselves, burnout becomes inevitable. But if we work with our own personal energy, we can create space in our lives, in our businesses, in our schedules that allow us to restore, right? So knowing our personal and collective cycles through astrology, we can harness these energies and hopefully prevent some burnouts or understand them when we're having them, right? And when we are able to cultivate patience and harness these energies on our behalf, we can work and rest with more ease, less guilt, and we can build trust within working with nature's cosmic cycles. I hope you've enjoyed this in-depth introductory episode on how entrepreneurs can use astrology in their brands and business. I know I could talk way more on each of these 7 specific ways to use astrology. And if you have any questions that result from this episode, I would love to hear them and answer them in an upcoming episode. Thank you so much for joining me in one of the very first episodes of the Savvy Luminary. If you enjoyed this astrology and business heart to heart, be sure to subscribe so you can catch all the future episodes. As a new podcast host, the biggest gift you can give to me is your rating and review. Every subscription, rating, and review matters because each of these gestures helps raise the new podcast's ranking. Please pass forward the love. I thank you in advance for helping me spread the word about the Savvy Luminary Astrology for Entrepreneurs. And remember, your vision and voice matters. It's time for you to shine bright like the luminary you are meant to be. Catch you next week.